Every year, millions of travelers walk among the quiet, pristine rows of the Normandy American Cemetery at Colville-sur-Mer. They look out over the wind-swept cliffs of Omaha Beach, reflecting on the unimaginable bravery of the young soldiers who stormed those shores on June 6, 1944. But if you wander far enough through those neat white marble crosses, you will come across a grave that tells one of the most tragic, closely guarded secrets of the entire Second World War. It is the resting place of a four-star general, a man General George C. Marshall once called, simply, the brains of the army. His name was Lesley J. McNair. He did not command a sweeping division on the beaches of D-Day, nor did he lead a lightning-fast armored column like George S. Patton. Yet almost every American soldier who fought in Europe did so under a system that McNair personally designed. He was the unsung architect of the United States military, the administrative genius who took a microscopic, outdated army and grew it into an 8-million-man juggernaut capable of crushing the Axis powers. But on July 25, 1944, just weeks after the Allied landings, this brilliant strategist would meet a sudden, horrific end. He was not killed by a German sniper, nor did he fall to an enemy artillery shell. Instead, he was vaporized by his own country's weapons. In a catastrophic failure of communication, hundreds of American heavy bombers dropped their payloads directly onto the frontline positions where McNair was standing. How did one of America's highest-ranking generals end up in a muddy ditch, obliterated by friendly fire? And why did the United States government go to desperate lengths to hide his death from the world? To understand the tragic end of Lesley McNair, one must first understand the mind of the man who built the modern American soldier. Born in the small town of Verndale, Minnesota, on May 25, 1883, McNair was a highly intellectual child. In 1900, he won an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point. His classmates quickly gave him the nickname Whitey because of his striking ash-blonde hair, a name that would stick with him all the way to the halls of the Pentagon. McNair was a brilliant student, graduating 11th out of 124 in the legendary class of 1904, which included future legends like Douglas MacArthur and Joseph Stilwell. While many of his peers gravitated toward the infantry or cavalry, McNair had a mind for math, statistics, and mechanics, choosing the field artillery. It was in the artillery where McNair's obsessive focus on efficiency and doctrine began to take shape. After early platoon duty, he requested a transfer to the Ordnance Department, serving at Sandy Hook Proving Ground in New Jersey and the Watertown Arsenal in Massachusetts. He became a self-taught master of metallurgy, analyzing bronze, steel, and cast iron to determine the best materials for manufacturing cannons. He patented 3 unique designs for artillery projectiles in 1911. Later, while commanding Battery C of the 4th Field Artillery, he worked tirelessly to design pack howitzers, pack saddles, and ammunition carriers for mule-transported mountain units, ensuring the Army could fight in rugged, inaccessible terrain. By 1912, McNair's technical drawing and statistical analysis skills were known Army-wide. He was tasked with compiling over 7,000 test rounds of raw ballistic data into standardized firing tables, making it easier for artillery crews across the military to control indirect fire. During this time, he spent 7 months in France observing French artillery training. In 1914, he participated in the Battle of Veracruz as a logistics officer and later commanded a battery during the 1916 Pancho Villa expedition on the Mexican border. When the United States entered World War I in April 1917, McNair's rise accelerated. Assigned to the newly created 1st Division as Assistant Chief of Staff for training, he shared quarters on the voyage to France with Captain George C. Marshall. The two forged a lifelong professional and personal bond. Once in France, McNair was reassigned to the American Expeditionary Forces headquarters as Chief of Artillery Training. He was promoted to temporary Brigadier General at just 35 years old, making him the second youngest general officer in the entire Army. His brilliant training methods earned him the Army Distinguished Service Medal and the French Legion of Honor. But when the war ended, the American military was gutted by isolationism and budget cuts. McNair reverted to his permanent peacetime rank of major. During the interwar years, he served as a faculty member at the School of the Line at Fort Leavenworth, where he helped co-author the 1923 Field Service Regulations, the Army's core doctrine. Sent to Hawaii as the operations officer for the Hawaiian Department, he conducted empirical tests to settle a raging debate between the Coast Artillery and the rising Army Air Service regarding coastal defense. This thrust him into the spotlight during the famous 1925 court-martial of Brigadier General Billy Mitchell. Mitchell had claimed non-aviation officers were ignorant of air defense and that Hawaii was defenseless. McNair took the stand, utilizing meticulous statistics and plans to refute Mitchell's claims and prove that the air service had been heavily supported. From 1924 to 1928, McNair ran the ROTC program at Purdue University, turning it into the Army's largest motorized light artillery cadet unit. By the mid-1930s, he commanded Civilian Conservation Corps District E in the South, managing thousands of young men across 33 camps. This gave him practical experience in housing, feeding, and organizing massive bodies of men, the exact skills he would soon need to mobilize a nation. In 1940, with Europe engulfed in World War II, General George C. Marshall became Army Chief of Staff. He appointed McNair to head the Command and General Staff College, and by March 1942, named him Commanding General of Army Ground Forces. McNair was tasked with an astronomically difficult job: organize, train, and prepare every single American ground soldier for overseas combat. Under his command, the Army Ground Forces grew from 780,000 men to over 2.2 million. McNair believed that the only way to train a soldier was to make training as close to actual combat as possible. He instituted the legendary Louisiana and Carolina maneuvers, massive simulated war games involving hundreds of thousands of troops, where soldiers crawled under live machine gun fire and artillery shells were fired just yards over their heads. McNair was also a ruthless streamliner. While the War Department estimated America would need 350 divisions, McNair redesigned the entire structure of the infantry division, stripping away excess personnel and pooling specialized assets like heavy artillery and tank destroyers. Because of his efficiency drive, the United States won a global two-front war with just 91 divisions. Yet, some of McNair's decisions sparked intense historical debate. He was a fierce defender of the tank destroyer doctrine, believing that standard tanks should only support infantry, while specialized, lightly armored tank destroyers ambushed enemy armor. This left American crews undergunned when facing heavy German Panthers and Tigers. He also championed the individual replacement system, which funneled newly trained soldiers directly into depleted frontline units rather than rebuilding divisions as cohesive teams, resulting in high casualty rates among isolated replacements. Despite these criticisms, McNair's training machine succeeded in preparing millions for the invasion of Europe. But as D-Day approached, McNair was kept from a field command due to severe progressive hearing loss, a secret he hid from the public. Instead, the Allied High Command utilized him for one of the greatest deceptions of the war, Operation Quicksilver, to trick Adolf Hitler into believing the main invasion would land at the Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy. The Allies created the first United States Army Group, or FUSAG. This was a phantom command made of inflatable tanks, dummy planes, and fake radio traffic. Originally, George Patton was placed in command to sell the lie. But by July 1944, Patton was secretly sent to France to prepare his real Third Army for a breakout. To prevent the Germans from realizing Patton was gone, the Allies needed a replacement of equal stature. They turned to Lesley McNair. He was stepped down from Army ground forces and flown to England to act as the commander of this fictitious army group. For weeks, McNair played his part in the grand deception. But he was not a man who enjoyed sitting in offices while the soldiers he had trained were dying in the hedgerows of France. He wanted to see his training methods in action. On July 21st, 1944, McNair boarded a plane and flew to Normandy, heading straight for the front lines. By late July, the Allied advance was grinding to a bloody halt in the dense natural fortresses of the French bocage. To break the deadlock, General Omar Bradley conceived Operation Cobra, a massive breakout attempt west of St. Louis. Instead of a standard artillery bombardment, Bradley decided to use the heavy bombers of the 8th Air Force as flying artillery to obliterate a rectangular strip of land just 5 miles wide and 1 mile deep. To protect friendly ground forces, Bradley established a 1,200-yard safety buffer and insisted that the bombers fly parallel to the Saint-Lô-Perrier Highway, rather than crossing directly over American troops. However, a tragic breakdown in communication occurred. The air commanders believed Bradley had accepted their plan to fly perpendicular to the road to protect their formations from German anti-aircraft fire, while Bradley believed they had agreed to fly parallel. On the morning of July 25th, 1944, the sky turned black as over 1,500 heavy B-17 and B-24 bombers arrived overhead. McNair was dug into a slit trench near the highway, embedded with the 30th Infantry Division. Because of his hearing loss, he could not hear the nervous chatter of the young soldiers, but he could feel the earth begin to shake as the bombing began. Disaster struck almost immediately. A strong wind from the south blew the smoke and dust from the initial explosions backward, directly over the American lines. To the bombardiers peering through their sights miles above, the rising wall of dust looked like the target zone. Some lead bombers released their payloads early, prompting the planes behind them to do the same. The deadly rain of high explosives shifted, falling short of the German lines. For 20 agonizing minutes, American bombs pulverized American positions. A massive 500-pound bomb scored a direct hit on the trench where McNair was sheltering. The force of the blast hurled his body 80 feet into the air. When the dust settled, the friendly fire incident had killed 111 American soldiers and wounded nearly 500 more. Medics searching the smoking craters found the shattered remains of a senior officer, completely unrecognizable. They only realized who they had found when they brushed the thick Normandy mud off a single shoulder strap and discovered 3 silver stars. The death of a 3-star general threatened to cause a catastrophic blow to Allied morale and expose the Fusag deception. If the Germans realized the commander of the Calais invasion force was dead in Normandy, the entire illusion would collapse. The Allied High Command acted instantly to cover up the tragedy. On July 26th, a silent, secret funeral was held in Normandy. There was no band, no rifle volleys, and no press. Under the cover of secrecy, a small group of officers, including Patton, Bradley, and Courtney Hodges, stood in silence as they buried their friend in a temporary grave. Back home, the War Department released a brief statement claiming McNair had been killed by enemy fire while observing frontline action. The truth was kept classified until August 1944, after the Allied breakout succeeded and the deception was no longer critical. At the time of his death, McNair was the highest-ranking American officer ever killed in combat. In 1954, Congress posthumously promoted Lesley J. McNair to the rank of full 4-star general. Today, Fort Lesley J. McNair in Washington, D.C. stands as a tribute to his memory. Yet, despite his massive contribution to victory, he remains largely forgotten by the public. He did not write best-selling memoirs, and his personal papers were tragically destroyed by his grieving wife Claire after his death. But the legacy of Lesley McNair was carried on by the millions of men he trained. Every division that breached the Siegfried Line, and every soldier who survived the frozen forests of the Battle of the Bulge, did so using the tactics, weapons, and organization that McNair had spent his life perfecting. He was the architect who designed the weapon that saved the free world, and in a cruel twist of fate, that very weapon was what took his life on a warm summer morning in Normandy.